6 days. That's all that stands between a fragile ceasefire and a second round of strikes that could push oil past $100, trigger a humanitarian catastrophe for 88 million people, and reshape the Middle East in ways that no one is prepared for. But here's what the headlines aren't telling you. Both sides may have already decided what happens next. And the negotiation you're watching on the news? It may be a performance designed to end exactly the way it's ending. If you want to understand what's actually happening between the United States and Iran right now, stay with me. Because the real story isn't about diplomacy. It's about who gets blamed when diplomacy fails. And the answer to that question will determine whether the world wakes up on May 18th to a new war or to a last-minute deal that almost no one believes is possible. Let's start with the timeline, because the speed alone tells you everything. Friday, the United States sends Iran a written proposal through Swiss intermediaries in Geneva. Saturday morning, Secretary of State Marco Rubio publicly confirms it, calling it a comprehensive framework for ending hostilities. Sunday, Iran's Supreme National Security Council meets for 11 straight hours, 9 a.m. to 8 p.m., Tehran time. They send their response back through the same Swiss channel. Sunday night, Trump sees it around 6 p.m., Washington time. By midnight, he has rejected it, publicly. 4 words, all caps, on Truth Social. Totally unacceptable. Monday morning, Rose Garden, prepared statement, no press questions. The ceasefire we agreed to 3 weeks ago is now on life support. Monday afternoon, Press Secretary Leavitt holds a briefing and will not detail a single specific demand Iran made or removed. She repeats one word. Unacceptable. From written proposal to public rejection in less than 48 hours. A ceasefire that took 6 days of bombing and thousands of casualties to produce was effectively discarded in the time between a Friday and a Monday. That speed is not an accident. That speed is a signal. Hit the like button right now if this is the kind of analysis you can't find anywhere else. Because what we're about to get into, the real mechanics of why this is breaking down, goes much deeper than anything you'll see on cable news. Keep watching. Here's the gap between the two sides and why it may be impossible to close. Iran demanded the immediate lifting of every sanction imposed since 2017, not gradual relief phased over 18 months, which is what Washington proposed. Immediate. Complete. Every sanction from Trump's first-term maximum pressure campaign. Every sanction Biden added after the Natanz incident. Every sanction imposed 3 weeks ago after Iranian missiles struck Haifa. All of it gone on day one. Iran also rejected any discussion of its ballistic missile program. Washington asked for a 5-year freeze on missiles exceeding 1,100 kilometers in range. Tehran's response, according to an official who reviewed it, declared the issue non-negotiable and outside the scope of any ceasefire framework. On the nuclear question, Iran offered to cap uranium enrichment at 60%. That sounds like a concession. Here is why it is not. 60% is exactly where Iran sits today. The latest IAEA inspection report from April 29th confirms it. Iran offered to keep doing precisely what it is already doing. Washington wanted a rollback to 20%, the level established in the original JCPOA. The distance between 60 and 20 is not a negotiating gap. It is a chasm. And then there is the demand that no American president has the legal authority to grant. Iran wants written guarantees that no future administration can reimpose sanctions. Congress controls sanctions law. A president cannot bind future Congresses or future administrations. The Iranian government knows this. They negotiated the JCPOA. They watched Trump tear it up in 2018. They know the guarantee is constitutionally impossible, which raises a question that should stop you cold. Why would Iran demand something it knows cannot be delivered? Dennis Ross, the former Middle East envoy who negotiated some of the most complex regional agreements in modern history, told PBS NewsHour that Iran's proposal was engineered to be rejected. His words, "They're buying time to rebuild air defenses and resupply Hezbollah. They're not negotiating. They're stalling." But here is where the analysis gets uncomfortable, because Ross is only half right. Iran's proposal may have been designed to fail, and so may America's. Washington's framework demanded a rollback to 20% enrichment, a 5-year missile freeze, a 75% reduction in Hezbollah funding, and a full withdrawal of the IRGC from Syria within 6 months. Each demand, taken individually, is defensible. Together, they form a package that no Iranian government could accept and survive politically. The administration knows that. When both sides construct proposals that the other cannot say yes to, the negotiation is not failing. It is performing. Both governments are building the documented record that justifies resuming hostilities. It is not diplomacy. It is mutual alibi construction, and the alibi is almost complete. Now here is the detail from this past weekend that most coverage buried, and it may matter more than the rejection itself. Iran quietly published revised maritime maps showing its territorial waters extending further into the Strait of Hormuz. According to the Wall Street Journal, the new boundaries claim an additional 4 nautical miles of what was previously international waters. At the strait's narrowest point, Iranian territorial claims now reach within 2 miles of Omani waters. 4 miles sounds like a cartographic footnote. It is not. 20% of the world's oil supply transits the Strait of Hormuz every single day, 21 million barrels. The strait is 21 miles wide at its narrowest point. The navigable shipping channels occupy roughly 6 miles, split into 2 3-mile inbound and outbound lanes with a 2-mile buffer. Extending Iranian territorial claims by 4 miles means those shipping lanes now fall partially within what Iran considers sovereign waters. That gives Iran legal pretext, under its own revised maritime law, to stop, board, and inspect any vessel transiting the strait. Iran does not need to close the strait. It needs to create enough uncertainty that shipping companies reroute, insurance rates spike, and oil markets price in disruption. That is already happening. Lloyd's of London reports tanker insurance rates through the strait have tripled in the past week. Maersk is rerouting. Mediterranean Shipping Company issued a similar advisory. The U.S. Fifth Fleet reported Iranian fast boats approached within 6 nautical miles of commercial shipping lanes twice last week, not threatening maneuvers. Closer than agreed boundaries. Iran does not need to fire a weapon. It needs the credible possibility that it might. The redrawn maps are that threat rendered in ink. And while the maps were being redrawn, both militaries were moving. The USS Gerald R. Ford Carrier Strike Group transited the Suez Canal this week. According to U.S. Naval Institute tracking, it reaches the Gulf of Oman by May 15th, 2 days before the ceasefire expires. The USS Eisenhower Strike Group is already on station. 2 carrier strike groups within range of Iran positioned before the deadline. Defense Secretary Hegseth, before the Senate Armed Services Committee, said Iran is testing us. When asked directly whether the administration would respond to the redrawn maritime boundaries, his answer was, "We are evaluating all options." That is not ambiguity. That is Pentagon language for the decision has not been announced, but the preparations have been made. On the Iranian side, commercial satellite imagery from Planet Labs shows increased activity at missile bases near Shiraz and Kerman. The Revolutionary Guard Corps has moved mobile missile launchers out of hardened shelters and dispersed them to secondary positions. That is standard procedure before an anticipated strike. It makes the launchers harder to target. It also signals Iran is ready to fire. You do not transit a carrier strike group through the Suez Canal as a precaution. You do not disperse mobile missile launchers as a negotiating gesture. Both sides are telling each other the same thing. We are ready. The only question is whether ready means ready to fight or ready to watch the other side blink. Now let's talk about what a second round actually means, because the first round already crossed lines that most people haven't processed. 6 days of airstrikes destroyed 70% of Iran's refining capacity. 14 major facilities hit. According to satellite analysis by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, Iran lost 4.1 million barrels per day of refining capability. The Iranian rial lost 42% of its value in 2 weeks. Protests broke out in 6 cities over fuel rationing. The IRGC deployed domestically for the first time since 2019. That is what brought Tehran to the table, not diplomacy. Destroyed infrastructure. A second round would eliminate the remaining 30%. But it would then move down the target list to what the first round left intact. Electrical grid infrastructure, water treatment facilities, transportation networks. That is no longer a military campaign targeting strategic assets. That is the systematic destruction of the systems that keep 88 million people alive. The humanitarian consequences do not stop at Iran's borders. Refugee flows into Iraq, Afghanistan, Pakistan, Turkey, and the Gulf states. Further oil price spikes absorbed by every economy on Earth. Goldman Sachs has already told clients to expect oil above $100 if the ceasefire collapses and the strait closes. $100 oil in an American election cycle is not an abstraction. You cannot run a maximum pressure campaign against Iran and simultaneously promise low gas prices. Those two objectives collide. May 17th may be the date they do. I want to be precise about what I do not know, because honesty about uncertainty is the only thing that makes analysis worth trusting. I do not know whether this administration wants a deal or wants a war. The Rose Garden statement said life support. That is war language. But Brett McGurk is still in the room in Muscat. You do not keep your chief negotiator at the table if you have already decided to walk away, unless you keep him there specifically to preserve the appearance that you tried. I do not know whether Iran wants a deal or wants to stall and rebuild. Ross says stalling. But 11 hours of National Security Council deliberation is not the behavior of a government that has already made up its mind. Governments that have decided do not deliberate for 11 hours. They deliberate for 2 and issue the prepared statement. 11 hours suggests real internal division, a faction that wants a deal, a faction that does not. And the counterproposal may reflect the compromise between them rather than a unified strategy of rejection. What I do know is what the instruments are showing. Carrier groups in position, missile launchers dispersed, insurance rates tripled, shipping companies rerouting, oil at $89 and climbing, every indicator pointing in the same direction. I have covered situations where the instruments were wrong, where carriers repositioned and then sailed home, where deadlines passed quietly, where the rhetoric ran hot and the reality stayed cold. That is possible here. It is always possible. But I have also covered situations where the instruments were exactly right. Iraq, 2003, Libya, 2011, the same pattern. Impossible demands, failed negotiations, military repositioning, and then on a date that everyone could see coming, the strikes began. May 17th is 6 days away. I will be here every day covering this as it develops, because this story is moving faster than any single news cycle can track. So here is what I want from you. Not what you hope happens, what you actually think will happen. Does this ceasefire survive the next 6 days? Based on the positions, the military movements, the economics, and the history, is there a deal left to be made, or has that window already closed? Put your assessment in the comments, dated on the record. On May 18th, we will know who called it. If this gave you a real framework for understanding what the next 6 days mean, hit the like button. Share this with one person who needs to understand what's actually at stake. And if you want daily analysis like this, not summaries, not talking points, but the actual mechanics of how these decisions get made, subscribe. The next update drops tomorrow.